In this module, we discuss faith and the role of evidence. What is faith? Faith is the first principle of the gospel that few people can explain very well. Depending on whether you are coming from a God outside the box or God inside the box perspective, you will get two very different answers regarding faith. Elder Orson Pratt said, "Faith is of two kinds, namely, false and true." Why is it essential to understand faith? Hebrews 11:6 says, "Without faith it is impossible to please Him, God." Elder Orson Pratt said, "Faith alone will not save men. Neither will faith and works save them, unless they are of the right kind. Indeed, the faith and works of the greatest portion of mankind will be the very cause of their damnation. True faith and righteous works are essential for salvation, and without both of these, no man ever was or ever can be saved." So what are the characteristics of true faith versus false faith? The restored gospel says one thing, as you would expect, and traditional Christianity says the opposite. Elder Orson Pratt said, "Faith or belief is the result of evidence presented to the mind. Without evidence, the mind cannot have faith in anything." Traditional Christianity, and consequently most of the world, says faith is not based on proof or evidence. Webster's dictionary says, "Faith is belief that is not based on proof or evidence." Mortimer Adler, following traditional Christianity, said, "Faith consists of beliefs voluntarily espoused, beliefs that are totally beyond the reach of evidence and rational processes. I believe," said an early Christian, Tertullian, "because it is absurd, that is, non-rational." Elder Orson Pratt said, "A false faith is the result of giving credence to false evidence. A true faith, the result derived from true evidence." Eternalism claims there is no such thing as faith without action. There is belief without action, but not faith without action. True faith leads to correct actions. False faith leads to false actions. The blind faith of historical Christianity declares war on reason and the human mind. St. Thomas Aquinas is attributed as saying, "To those who have faith, no explanation is necessary. To those who do not, no explanation is possible." St. Augustine said, "I do not know in order to believe, I believe in order to know." Martin Luther said, "It is impossible to harmonize faith and reason. You must abandon your reason, know nothing of it, annihilate it completely, or you will never enter heaven. You must leave reason to itself, for it is the born enemy of faith. There is nothing so contrary to faith as law and reason." Martin Luther also said, "Reason is the whore of the devil. It can only blaspheme and dishonor everything God has said or done. Throw dung in her face to make her ugly. She is and she ought to be drowned in baptism." Martin Luther said, "Usury, drunkenness, adultery, these crimes are self-evident, and the world knows that they are sinful. But that bride of the devil, reason, stalks abroad, the fair courtesan, and wishes to be considered wise, and thinks that whatever she says comes from the Holy Ghost. She is the most dangerous harlot the devil has." Notice his use of the term self-evident in the quote, which assumes the use of reason at the same time he is attacking it. With reason gone, how easy it becomes to lead people blindly wherever you want to take them. Where this blind, incomprehensible faith is taking those who follow it is to an incomprehensible, God outside the box, mired in mystery with all of the inherent contradictions that come with that belief. Donald Bloch said, "In seeking understanding, faith must be on guard against making its cardinal doctrines too clear and distinct, since this serves to undercut or deny the mystery in revelation. Revelation overthrows and disrupts human reason, while at the same time placing it on a new foundation." You may ask, what is this new foundation that undercuts reason? With reason gone, what are you left with? Karl Barth said, "Faith is not, therefore, a standing, but a being suspended and hanging without ground under our feet." The answer, of course, is blind faith, an inexplainable, mystical feeling, just hanging out there believing without having any foundation at all. But then, how do I know if my faith is real or not? Donald Bloch said, "The essence of piety is neither knowing nor doing, but feeling. In other words, put heart over mind." So the next coherent step is for mind and reason to give way to blind faith and feelings. He who has the strongest feelings has the strongest faith. Martin Luther said, "Rage acts as a stimulant to my whole being. It sharpens my wits, puts a stop to the assault of the devil, and drives out care. Never do I write or speak better than when I am in a rage. If I wish to compose, write, pray, and preach well, I have to be in a rage." In other words, feeling takes over, you lead with your willful heart, not your rational mind. This blind faith is not evidence-based, but feeling-based. Not just feeling, but willfulness as well. In fact, the strongest emotions become the stimulant to your whole being and become equated with revelation and feeling the Spirit. We will compare and contrast Soren Kierkegaard versus Orson Pratt, who each represent the two opposite perspectives on the meaning of faith. Soren Kierkegaard wrote about what he called the Night of Faith. Elder Orson Pratt wrote a pamphlet called True Faith. As you can imagine, these two men detail completely opposite perspectives on faith. Soren Kierkegaard wrote, "It is easy to see, though it scarcely needs to be pointed out, since it is involved in the fact that the reason is set aside, that faith is not a form of knowledge. Without risk, there is no faith, and the greater the risk, the greater the faith. To understand faith is to understand that faith cannot be understood, must not be understood. And this absurdity held fast in the passion of inwardness is faith, the earnestness of facing the absurd." As you can see, Soren Kierkegaard's primacy issues line up with the primacy of consciousness, that is, faith over reason, revelation over observation, and heart over mind. He claims just believe even if it is absurd, and anything is possible because God is absolute. God can do anything, including unreal things. According to Kierkegaard, the more desire or willfulness and ignoring of doubts, the more the faith. Elder Orson Pratt said the opposite. Faith or belief is the result of evidence presented to the mind. Without evidence, the mind cannot have faith in anything. The weakness or strength of faith will, therefore, in all cases, be in proportion to the weakness or strength of the impressions produced on the mind by evidence. Faith most generally inspires the heart to actions or works of a nature similar and suitable to the belief. Elder Pratt's primacy issues line up with the primacy of reality, that is, reason over faith, observation over revelation, and mind over heart. So who is the true knight of faith? For Kierkegaard, the perfect ignorance or blind obedience of Luther and Calvin is not enough. We must go further and actually risk against what our reason is telling us in order to have faith. As he said, absurdity held fast in the passion of inwardness is faith, the earnestness of facing the absurd. In other words, the stronger the opposing evidence, the greater the faith. The faith scale no longer stops at 0, blind faith or perfect ignorance. It now goes negative into willful rebellion to contradict things you know to be true. Contrast this with Orson Pratt, who said, "Without evidence, the mind cannot have faith in anything." For the primacy of reality, then, the more supporting evidence, the greater the faith. Faith becomes enlightened and rational. What do you call those who rebel against perfect knowledge? These are the sons of perdition, who are in open rebellion to the truth, as listed in Doctrine and Covenants 76. These become a knight of the absurd. I believe because it is absurd and can't possibly be true. The more opposing evidence to rebel against, the greater the faith. Faith becomes rebellious and irrational, pure willfulness, like seeing the sun shining at noonday and claiming that it doesn't exist. What do you call those who have perfect knowledge? These are the sons of God, as listed in Moroni 7:26. Those who see Christ with a perfect knowledge, and by faith they become the sons of God. I believe because it is based on sound, rational evidence. If willful thinking is true, then the whole universe will obey your willfulness. If willful thinking is not true, and the universe is lawful, you just invited a universe of problems into your life by ignoring reality. Let's do an existential proof of which version of faith you are willing to bet your life on. Consider the modern marvel called the jumbo jet, with all the science and engineering involved in building and flying it, using man's reason. Imagine Orson Pratt, the knight of reason, as the pilot, with his primacy issue of reason over faith. Flight A1 is in good shape, well maintained and staffed. It is statistically safer than driving on the freeway. Now consider Flight Z1, the last flight you'll ever take, with Soren Kierkegaard, the knight of faith, as the pilot, with his primacy issue of faith over reason. Kierkegaard is ignoring flashing warning lights, smoke coming out of the engine, rusty holes through the fuselage. He painted every emotional slogan on the plane to help boost the faith of the crew and the passengers and manipulate their emotions. Statistically, there are very low odds of it not crashing, but faith is expected to make up the difference. You get to choose. Which one are you going to board? It makes obvious the insanity of the great apostasy. If you board that abominable plane, you have no chance of getting to your eternal destination. This thought experiment makes obvious the sanity of the restoration. a well-oiled and well-maintained machine that will get you to where you want to go eternally. Remember our first philosophical walk with Aristotle and Plato? We are now going to take our second philosophical walk with oncoming traffic. Using our evidence scale, which couple, A, B, or C, has the greater faith when crossing a busy street? Consider couple A. They look before they leap. They exercise their faith by looking both ways to make sure it is safe to cross. Then cautiously step into the street only after seeing evidence of no oncoming traffic. They crossed with perfect knowledge or rational faith. Consider couple B. They exercise their faith by not looking either way. They close their eyes and let their feelings guide them as to the best time to cross the street. They cross with perfect ignorance or blind faith. Now consider couple C. They exercise their faith by stepping into the street only after looking both ways and knowing it is unsafe to cross. They make sure that the traffic is coming. In fact, the bigger vehicles coming as fast as possible, the better to show their faith. Their faith is perfect absurdity, or willful faith. This is an obvious absurdity and death wish associated with both blind or willfully disobedient faith. In other words, show your faith by taking a giant absurd leap. But what about leaps of faith? You will often hear Latter-day Saint stories advising us to take leaps of faith. For example, Elder Packer described an experience he had with President Lee. He said, "I returned to Elder Lee and told him that I saw no way to move in the direction I was counseled to go. He said, 'The trouble with you is you want to see the end from the beginning.' I replied that I would like to see at least a step or two ahead. Then came the lesson of a lifetime. You must learn to walk to the edge of the light and then a few steps into the darkness. Then the light will appear and show the way before you." Then he quoted these 18 words from the Book of Mormon. "Dispute not because ye see not, for ye receive no witness until after the trial of your faith." Was President Lee's advice suggesting either a blind or willful leap of faith? Notice Elder Packer wasn't told to take a running, blindfolded jump into the darkness, never looking around. Elder Packer was told to walk as far as he could in the light, then take a few rational steps and pause to wait for the illuminating light to catch up. But don't Latter-day Saints believe in acting on faith even though we can't see perfectly? A more fundamental question is a primacy issue. Which has primacy, look or leap? Here is a helpful 3-tier resolution. Tier 1 and Tier 2 says, look before you leap. Look both ways before you step into the street. Pay attention, listen to your reason, and observe the evidence that it is safe to cross. Tier 2 and Tier 3 says, only after you see that it is safe to cross do you take a leap of faith by actually stepping into the street. When you do so, it is with true faith, with the utmost trust and confidence that you won't get run over. All the while that you are exercising your rational faith crossing the street, you look for any opposing evidence that may come up during your leap of faith crossing the street. The future is always darkness. That's why we tackle it carefully, using reason as our means of survival while exercising our faith. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to the Christian Eternalism YouTube channel and visit www.christianeternalism.org.